The earliest known flicker fiend was Voltwick, a goblin blacksmith who loved working in storms. Lightning struck him often, and he just brushed it off as part of the job. Eventually it felt good. He worked like that for years, bolts dancing across his skin. Then one day, one bolt too many hit. Something paranormal happened. Voltwick was no longer just a goblin. He became the first renowned flicker fiend, a goblin evolution into a deity feared throughout the entire realm of the Hushed.
After he transformed into a flicker fiend and got his new abilities, Voltwick decided to go to war with the orcs, because he always thought he was a better blacksmith than any of them. Sparks flew, electricity tore through their ranks, and chaos reigned. For days, he was unstoppable, leveling orc villages and even cities, until the orcs finally did enough damage to wear him down. That's when the elves who had been spying captured him and re-engineered leftover orc tech to channel his electricity into their villages. And then they act so high and mighty because their energy is greener and more organized than orc tech. Oh, don't get me started. The elves didn't even invent anything new. They scavenged broken orc machines, rewired them with glittery vines and polished wood, and strapped Voltwick inside like a living generator. His body hummed, powering their simple things like light bulbs, cooling fans, and water pumps. To them it was triumph. To Voltwick it was humiliation. Deep in his chest a new fire boiled, now realizing who the true enemy was. They thought they'd subdued him. Instead, they awakened a whole new pot of steaming beef, thick enough to choke the roots of their shining city. But Voltwick wasn't done. He was just charged.
So it turned out that the elves weren't utilizing enough of the electricity that Voltwick created in the generator chamber. Their simple lights, water pumps, and occasional disco party just didn't take enough away from Voltwick. So naturally, he just kept leveling up in the chamber, and even branched a few naturally occurring static wires. Or so the elves call it. Those wires just so happened to run all the way right into Goblin Town. And guess what came to be over time? Over time, Voltwick started branching out more and more static strands of electricity. See, goblins are stupid, so naturally many mistakes occurred. Broken electrical panels. Everybody blaming elves, but the fact of the matter is that elves are too smart and goblins are just too stupid. We gave him the electronic pathways he needed to live a peaceful afterlife, within a card, of course.
The elves claimed they had the electricity under control for 6 months, but let me tell you, it was more like 2. While elves were busy firing other elves for safety incidents at their day jobs by month 2, Voltwick had already created a branch of electrical river flow that had bounced off of the lava rivers and straight into Goblin Town. Naturally, goblins eat anything mysterious, and the result, more flicker fiends and goblins that could store that fire internally, instead of just panicking on fire eternally. It's bad news, Fro. So ultimately, all this chaos matured into more flicker fiends and goblins with fire powers. So naturally, they did what goblins do best. They marched right into the elves' electrical center and destroyed everything, until the generator powered down, and Voltwick could break free. Now seeing the fire goblins, newly enlightened Voltwick came to the sudden realization that goblins aren't just goblins, but more like Eevee from Pokemon. But better, after Voltwick discovered that goblins evolved like Eevee from Pokemon, then things got messy in goblin culture. Voltwick started experimenting with his fellow goblins like they were guinea pigs. He made some drink water continuously to create a water-powered goblin mon, another eating ice, and then the ones who really got the short end of the stick. He opened up a whole new Pandora's box of cruelty when he made goblins eat salad to create leaf and wind goblin money. Not all followed him. Many couldn't deal with his organization and chose to keep eating trash and stay regular goblins. But Voltwick's Goblinmon army was growing at an intimidating rate. So goblins continued to be goblins in Goblin Town, but Voltwick started a whole new Goblinmon society elsewhere with the goblins that either agreed to go with him or got kicked out of Goblin Society for not being goblin enough. And guess where Voltwick decided to set up shop? Right next to Blort's Tower. Oh, and if you don't know who Blort is, you better go subscribe to my YouTube channel in my bio and dig up his videos that are buried there somewhere. The Society of the Hushed thought that Voltwick simply disappeared to be at peace because we all low-key knew that elves had been the bad guys the whole time. But really, Voltwick was leveling up the Goblinmon by spamming scheduled calisthenics exercises. See, turning them water fire or electric superpowered was easy and simple. Goblin logic. But Voltwick got creative. He even made one goblin eat tarot cards until he created a newly discovered psychic Goblinmon. That's when it got dangerous, not just for Blort, but Voltwick knew he had created a being too powerful to keep in check. The psychic Goblinmon was no joke. After wrecking Blort's tower, he turned on Voltwick and started taking over. But fortunately for the realm, the orcs had already begun recuperating and even developed a new technology to capture the goblinmon. With newfound resolve, the orcs united, knowing they had to act quickly. They harnessed their latest technology crafted from magical crystals and ancient wisdom, aiming to bring down the rogue goblinmon before it could wreak more havoc. Fortunately for Voltwick, he got to Blort first, panicking for his life. Blort gave away his most powerful enchantment, the Amulet of Trust Me, Bro. Barely in the nick of time, he was able to rally up his fellow goblinmon again by referencing the Goblin Bible. Funny thing is, it actually did say goblins will always be goblins in that old orc tech manual. So his point was valid. He said psychic goblinmon are past the point of no return and an insult to goblin culture everywhere. So naturally the goblinmon hopped back on board, but like I said, the psychic goblinmon was no joke. Voltwick, now emboldened by the renewed support, stood atop a rock, rallying his fellow. Voltwick knew that despite leveling up his fellow goblinmon, they still didn't stand a chance against the all-powerful psychic goblinmon. But Voltwick's electric current made him clever. See, Voltwick understood polarity, and he knew the psychic goblinmon's weakness was to get old school. Voltwick rallied his fellow goblinmons, drawing a plan in the dirt that revealed how they could outsmart their foe. With a surge of electricity crackling around him, he prepared to reveal the true power of teamwork and cleverness. That's right, Voltwick took his goblinmon with him and marched right back into Goblin Town. Since he now had the Amulet of Trust Me, Bro, he was able to gather the regular unevolved goblins. Now, the psychic goblinmon was powerless and unable to affect the regular goblins because they were just too stupid. The war raged on until it was a complete tie, and regular goblin society was restored once again. Goblins will be goblins. The end.